John. How are you?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Good. A little worn out, but good. Rachel's had me working on building the deck today.
Uh-oh. Aren't you getting lots of rain?
Not a lick.
Wow, I saw a weather map. Looked like you guys were getting creamed.
No, we haven't. It hasn't rained at all today. A little cloudy. But
I
it's
think we're like where we are in North Carolina is like right on the edge, and it's like getting sucked away from us. So we
Oh,
have
okay.
we haven't actually gotten any rain.
Wow, because I was looking at it and I was thinking, man alive, you guys are getting creamed. Meanwhile, we're baking. It's 102 with high humidity.
ugh, the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
Now I have to go check the weather map to see what you're talking about. Yeah, I've been avoiding it. It's just never good news.
Avoiding the hot weather.
No, avoiding the weather. Just the weather
Oh,
in general. Like go
yeah.
with the forecasts.
Well, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
If it's snowing, you can prepare for it by wearing the right clothes. If it's hot, you just deal with it.
There's only so many clothes you can take off.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're exactly right. But boy, I'll tell you what, it is blistering. I'm at the magic age where I don't feel like going outside much during this heat, except to take the dog for a walk.
Right. And make sure it's early in the morning.
Yeah, early in the morning is fine. Boy.
Yeah. Well, it was chilly here this morning. I was like, oh, it's nice. And then,
Well, you have some elevation, right?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, Greenville's getting socked with it, looks like, but not us yet.
Okay.
Heck, it hasn't even gotten to Greenville yet. It's just kind of staying east of Charlotte, looks like.
So you're right on the border then.
Well, we're kind of between, if you draw a line between Asheville and Greenville, we're about, I don't know, 60, 70 miles west of there.
Oh,
We're,
okay. Oh, that far west. Oh, okay.
yeah, something
So
like that.
are you near the Cherokee Reservation?
Yeah, about 20
Yes.
minutes away.
Oh, okay.
You're not coming through, Rachel.
Oh, I was saying that's where we go to watch movies because they have a great movie theater there. So
Oh, really?
They really
yeah.
do. Yep.
Have you read much about the Eastern Band?
I
Not
mean,
much.
a little bit. I mean, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Where we are, just for your information, is the capital of the Cherokee Nation,
Oh, the Western Band.
the Western Band.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my grandfather lived there
Oh,
in
really?
Tahlequah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, Rachel, and so you've been to Tahlequah.
I have not, but he did live there.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, it's a neat little community. And, being the capital of the Cherokee Nation, every year they have a big celebration right about, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And people come from all over the world that are Cherokee descent. Are you on the rolls perchance?
I'm not, no.
Okay, yeah. That are on the rolls. If you're on the rolls, you're entitled to all the benefits.
Yep. And they're making it more difficult to get on the rolls, at least out here.
Oh, really? Well, see,
Hmm.
the Eastern Band is governed differently than the Western Band. The Dawes Commission, I think it was like in 1880 or whenever it was, it set everything up here. That's when they established the rolls out here. And a lot of people chose not to get on the rolls, and they've suffered the payment, or suffered the penalties forever. But those that are on the rolls, lots of benefits. Perhaps not in 1880, but now.
Yeah. Now it's the per cap is the reason to be on it here. If you're living on the res, and getting per cap. You have, of course, all the healthcare and all that kind of stuff, but it's quite a chunk of change twice or three times a year
Oh
from
yeah.
all the casinos and everything.
Yeah, I have a friend that was in the Cherokee Hospital here in Tahlequah, and boy, they've imported and grown the best service that you could imagine. He's from originally he's from Dallas area, and he said, "Boy, he said I couldn't ask for any more."
I mean, it's after
That-
all these years, they get to take care of themselves instead of having to depend on other people, I
Yep.
guess. And by God, they're going to do it.
Well, they've never really been like the Indians that have lived on the reservations, like the Sioux and what have you. Matter of fact, one time we were up in North Dakota and we were, I can't remember the name of the Sioux tribe that was there, and they were having a big meeting. And I was telling them I was from Tahlequah, and one of the young ladies told me, she said, "I sure wish that our tribe would have been treated like the Cherokees, because we were imprisoned to the system," I think was the word she used. So
Yeah.
anyway, I see Fred's here.
Yep.
Well, there's Sue. Sue was here. Now she's gone.
Yes, no, so Sue was reaching for her Bible. How bad is the weather, guys?
Like
It's
we were
on.
saying, it's at least where we live, it's fine. I haven't seen any rain today at
Yeah.
all.
It's
No, it hasn't
102 and
gotten to us. Yeah.
it hasn't. Okay.
No, we're too far inland, I think. You're too.
Okay. It's 102 here. I was telling Chris when I looked
Wow.
at the weather map, I thought you guys were just getting creamed with the storm coming through there.
We may still get some rain, but it loses force as it gets on land.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we usually we'll barely get the fringes of it, if anything.
Except for Hugo. Hugo was like the difference.
Yeah.
Did you guys get walloped by that?
Not really, no. Not
Really?
Okay, I was in Sumter, South Carolina during that one as a kid, and I still remember that one. That was not fun.
This was in the 80s.
Hugo was the late 80s, yeah.
Yeah. Our plant in Charlotte was down for several weeks.
Yep.
Because of the actual wind damage and rain damage.
Mhm.
I think we're actually going to get some of the rain up here in New England.
Yeah.
It's supposed to go out and then come back in again further
Oh.
up. Yeah.
Oh, good. That sounds very appetizing.
Yeah, that could make it worse for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess everybody's here is coming, so we can go ahead and begin. I'm going to try something at the very beginning, but there's a map that I want to share with you. And I'm not sure I know how to do it, but I'm going to try to screen share, see if it works. Okay. Okay. Here. Did you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Looks great.
wow, it worked. I spent an hour this afternoon looking at YouTube videos and I had a screen share. First time I've actually done it. Okay. Well,
Boy,
this is a map that shows the area we're going to be talking about. It shows the area that Israel eventually occupied, and then to its east, south of Israel, to the southeast is well, actually, it doesn't. Let me see if I can bring it up. Okay, Edom is at the very south, below the Dead Sea, and then to the east, going north is Moab, and then the next country to the north of Moab is Ammon, and then above that is what the Bible calls Aram Damascus, which is what we would call Syria today. Okay. And these are the kingdoms that the Bible is going to mention in these sections.
Fred, can you send
yeah.
that to us?
How do I do that? I wouldn't know how to do it. Well, let me work on it after this class.
Okay.
I'll watch some more YouTube videos on that. I'll learn how to send it.
Okay.
Fred, just go back to where you got it and send it from there.
Okay, yeah, that I think I can do. Okay. Mhm.
But you did that very well.
Good. I'm
That
very
you
proud of
did.
myself. I really am.
You should be. You
Yeah.
did. You're way ahead of us now, Fred.
Okay. Anyway, let's go. Where the reading today begins, we're in Deuteronomy, chapter 2, verse 2. Okay. And Deuteronomy really, in a sense, is a kind of a highlight film of the Torah, because it really basically, it just really, there's nothing new in it. It just goes over some of the major points of the four previous books. And a lot of scholars believe it was probably written years and years after the other four books, and then joined to them to make, the five books of Moses. Um, but it's a good book in the sense that all the boring parts from the previous books have been edited out. There's no leprosy stuff in there. There's no details of building the sanctuary. There's not all this nitty-gritty stuff about how to do the sacrifices. Pretty much all of that has been cut out. And basically, they're just really three things. One is a review of all the history of Israel up to that point, obviously emphasizing, the Exodus and the 40 years in the desert. And then there are some of the laws in the previous books are restated, sometimes in a little bit different form. And that's where it really gets its name. Deuteronomy is Greek deuteronomos, the second law. So the 10 Commandments are repeated, a number of the other laws are repeated, but sometimes with other stuff added onto it. And the third part is a long harangue by Moses, begging the people not to screw this up, not to go to the land and then start following other gods and lose the whole thing. So those are really the three main themes. And the first part of the book, what we'll be looking at now, is really kind of a recap of a lot of the history leading up to crossing the Jordan. At this point, they're camped on the plains of Moab on the eastern bank of the Jordan, right across from Jericho. Moses is preparing for his death, really. He's already appointed Joshua to be his successor. And the book of Deuteronomy is really three long speeches by Moses, sort of wrapping everything up. Um, so the first section really goes from verse chapter 2, verse 2, all the way through verse 8. So if somebody wants to read that, verses 2 through 8.
Sure. Hashem said to me, saying, enough of your circling this mountain, turn yourselves northward. You shall command the people, saying, you are passing through the boundary of your brothers, the children of Esau, who dwell in Seir. They will fear you, but you should be very careful. You shall not provoke them, for I shall not give you of their land even the right to set foot, for as a inheritance to the children of Esau have I given Mount Seir. You shall purchase food from them for money, so that you may eat. Also water shall you buy from them for money, so that you may drink. For Hashem your God has blessed you in all your handiwork. He knew your way in this great wilderness. This 40-year period, Hashem your God was with you. You did not lack a thing. So we passed from our brothers, the children of Esau, who dwell in Seir, from the way of the Arabah, from Elath, and from Ezion Geber, and we turned
Right.
and passed on the way
Yeah,
of the
that's
Moabite
far
desert.
enough. That's far enough there. Okay, so if you're coming up in Sinai, obviously the first thing you run into is the kingdom of Edom. That's the southernmost one. And Edom gets its name from being Esau's country. It's from the Hebrew Adom, which means red. And it also mentions Mount Seir. So Adom, Edom means red. Seir means hair in Hebrew. And if you remember, Esau was the red hairy twin. So that's where Mount Seir gets its name. The odd thing about this is, though, that here you have Esau afraid of Jacob, which kind of reverses the relationship, from earlier on in the Bible when you do this. The other problem with this is that it contradicts the same account of these events earlier on in the Bible. So if you actually turn back to Numbers, chapter 20 of Numbers, verse 14. Somebody want to read that section from verses 14 through 21.
chapter 20 of Numbers.
Yeah, 14 through 21 in chapter 20.
Okay, I'll be happy to read it.
Yeah.
Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardship that we have met. Know how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians dealt harshly with us and our fathers. And when we cried to the Lord, we heard our voice and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. And here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your territory. Please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through field or vineyard or drink water from a well. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right hand or the left hand until we have passed through your territory. But Edom said to him, you shall not pass through, lest I come out with the sword against you. And the people of Israel said to him, we will go up by the highway, and if we drink of your water, I and my livestock, then I will pay for it. Let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. But he said, you shall not pass through. And Edom came out against them with a large army and with a strong force. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory, so Israel turned away from him.
Yeah, which directly contradicts the account in Deuteronomy.
Yeah, it sure does.
So, yeah, so which one is true? It's a problem you really have with the Bible, and there are two approaches to it. You know, if you have an Orthodox translation or commentary on that, you know, to the rabbis there can't be any contradiction. So if it looked like a contradiction, you've got to somehow make the two match up. I found one Orthodox commentary on this where they said, Eastern Edom is very thinly populated, and they were the ones who were afraid of the Israelites. So the Israelites could go partly through Eastern Edom. When they got to the western part of Edom, that was where the cities were more heavily populated, and that's when they were turned back by the Edomite army. But you know, which is totally made up, and that's one way to try to explain the difference between the two passages. The other, you know, which most modern and non-Orthodox interpreters would take, is that basically most of these were probably oral history. You know, these were stories that probably got handed down orally through generations before anybody wrote anything down. And obviously, anytime you have an oral history being passed down over time, you're going to get different versions of the stories. And, you know, if, as most scholars believe, this really wasn't written down, maybe not until the Babylonian exile or a little bit later. You know, here you had scribes who had two stories here. You know, which one are you going to take? And what they really tended to do is to say, we'll just put in both of them. So we don't know which one, you know, is the more accurate account. We have no way of finding out at this point, and so we'll just put both of them in. You know, let the later generations sort it out. You know, you see this all through the Bible where there are two or three different versions of the story, and this is a pretty good illustration of that. You know, what's interesting is if you look at Edom on the map, if they had passed through Edom, that they would be passing south of the Dead Sea, you know, into the Negev desert. You know, they would not have had to cross the Jordan at all.
Yeah, they're long ways from the Jordan.
Yeah, it would be a totally different way of, and yet we're told that they're camped on the plains of Moab across from Jericho, which is north. And so, you know, what they do in this interpretation is they don't go through Edom, they swing north instead and try to go through Moab. Um, so if in Moab, if somebody wants to read us from 9 through 12, that
Fred,
describes yeah.
Fred, where are we? I'm lost.
Well, back in Deuteronomy in chapter 2, the
Fred,
next section. is chapters 9, is verses rather 9 through 12.
Fred,
So, yeah.
the details are so specific
Hmm.
with the landmarks and where they were and where the conversations had in both areas. I assume that you can go to those areas and see traces of where they might have been or might not have been, can't you?
Now that's the real problem. There's no archaeologic evidence for this one way or the other. We don't really get any good archaeologic evidence until about 1000 BCE, and that's about when King David roughly takes the throne of Israel. And they actually have found some inscriptions that show that there was a King David. And as you go forward from 1000 BCE, there's more and more archaeologic evidence to corroborate the Bible. But before 1000 BC, I mean, there's nothing the archaeologists have found that contradicts, the Bible, but there's nothing to
Mhm.
support it either. So,
Oh, really?
that's where
But
we are. Yeah.
like the mountain's so specific in name and location. Is that
Hmm.
mountain actually there?
Mount Seir?
Yeah.
No, no. Just like Mount Sinai, nobody has ever actually located Mount Sinai for that matter.
Okay.
You know, We,
And the
we
other
just don't
question,
know.
the other question I had in both instances, it talks about paying for transit and using
Mhm.
water or not using water. When we think of paying, we think of either bartering or paying in some kind of coin. Is that
Mhm.
what that's in reference to? Is that how that translates?
Yeah, the Hebrew term in the text is kesef, which basically means silver, but it can mean money in general. But so they're apparently talking about paying money for anything they took.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah,
there was silver back then that they used
yeah,
as funds. Okay.
yeah. Basically, there were no coins. But what they appear to have done is that they had strips of the metal which you could work back and forth and break off a piece, and you'd put that into balance. The unit of money that the Bible talks about is the shekel, and that's in the Hebrew word shakal, which means to weigh. A shekel is literally a weight, and so you had a reference shekel, and
Oh, a
and
shekel
then
is weight?
is a weight, yeah.
Oh,
And you'd have a pair of balance scales. You put the reference shekel in one, and break off a piece of your strip of silver and put it in the other until you've made up enough, for a shekel's weight.
so then there was was there gold and there was obviously gold because there's reference to gold. So gold and silver were
There is, although
accessible.
silver apparently is what was the prime thing used for money, because the Hebrew word kesef is used for money in general, besides just specifically silver, which suggests that for some reason silver rather than gold is what was commonly used for money, at, at least in those days before there was any coinage.
Hmm.
So, someone want to read 9 through 12?
Sure. Um, and the Lord said to me, do not besiege Moab and do not provoke them to battle, for I will not give you his land as an inheritance. For to the sons of Lot I have given Ar as an inheritance. The Amim used to dwell there, a great and multitudinous people, and lofty as the giants. The Rephaim, they too are accounted as giants, and the Moabites call them Amim. And in Seir the Horites used to dwell, and the sons of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them in their onslaught, and dwelled in their stead, as Israel did to the land of its inheritance, which the Lord gave them.
Yeah, the Moab and the kingdom to the north of it, Ammon, both of these are related to Lot. Because you remember the story in Genesis when God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot escapes with his family. His wife looks back and she gets sapped. And so Lot and his two daughters are left. They're living in a cave. His daughters figure the whole world's been destroyed. They're the only humans left. And so to keep the species going, they get their father drunk on 2 successive nights and have sex with him. And according to the tradition, the nations of Moab and Ammon are derived from these two incestuous, encounters. In fact, Ma'av actually in Hebrew, Av is a father. Ma'av means from a father. It's where Moab actually gets its name. And so, and you read later in Deuteronomy, they're considered to be cursed nations because of that. And it says no Moabite or Ammonite can come into the covenant of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. You're not allowed to accept them. They can't convert and be Israelites. Which is really what makes the book of Ruth so striking. Of a Moabite woman, because of her character, that actually gets accepted into Israel in spite of that. So the point is interesting that God tells them, you can't have these lands because I've given them, to Esau, and I've given this other land to the descendants of Lot. And it's really one of the few indications you really have early in the Bible that God is not just the God of the Israelites. One of the theories about the Jews are usually given the credit for being the first monotheists, but one of the theories about that is it's not monotheism in the sense that we understand it. It was one God for Abraham, but other people have their gods too. So it was not universal monotheism, it was just Abraham's one God. And there is some evidence of that. If you look at the Exodus story, God tells Moses, go down to Pharaoh, tell him, let my people go. But don't worry, I've hardened his heart. He's going to say no. So I get to do all kind of horrible things to the Egyptians. And we're going to show them who the Alpha God is, in the Middle East. And then, after this, after they cross the sea and Pharaoh's army is drowned, and they sing this song of triumph on the other shore of the sea. And one of the verses is, "Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods?" God has shown that he's more powerful than Pharaoh's God. And so it's not really clear, really, until you get to Isaiah. Once you get to Isaiah, then there's no question. There's only one God of the whole world, and he uses nations for his purposes. But it's really not clear
That's
there.
why Fred, is that why we say you shall have no other gods before me?
Yeah, I mean, it may very well, at that time, they very well have believed there were other gods. They're just not your God. It's not, again, the message you really get, from Moses and the 5 books of Moses, is don't worship idols. It's dangerous. Your God is a jealous God. If he catches you cheating on him with other gods, he's going to get really angry and punish you. And when you get to Isaiah, the message really is don't worship idols. It's stupid. There are no other gods. The idols don't represent anything.
So, Fred, does this mean that the descendants of Lot and Esau were monotheistic and with the same God, or
Well, no, they had their own gods. I mean,
they had their own gods?
oh, they
Okay,
did, yeah. Even though, the God of Israel had given them their lands according to this,
yes.
they're not worshiping him. They're worshiping their own gods.
Ah, okay. Okay, because I kind of assumed reading it that they worship the same God.
It kind of looked like that because God says, I gave them their land. You figure
Yeah,
he would be there, but he's not. No. And later on, when you get into the prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, they list the various gods of the other nations that are surrounding Israel. The other interesting thing about this passage, he talks about other people, the Amim and the Horim, that we really don't know anything about. The archaeologists have no traces of them at all. And we don't know really whether these are mythologic people that are just made up here, or there really were people called the Amim and the Horim, way back earlier, even before Abraham's time. It's not clear whether this is myth at this point or whether these are real people. So then the next section is verses 13 through 16. Someone wants to read that.
Sure.
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Go for it, John.
Now rise up and go over the brook Zered. So we went over the brook Zered, and the time from our leaving Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the brook Zered was 38 years, until the entire generation, that is, the men of war, had perished from the camp as the Lord had sworn to them. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them to destroy them from the camp until they had perished.
Yeah, yeah. Again, Kadesh Barnea. That's the spot on the east side of the Jordan where Moses had sent out spies to spy out the land. You know, the 12 spies. You know, and the 10 of them come back and say, you know, it's a great place, but we can't do this. They're too strong for us. We should have never come here. Let's go back to Egypt. And at that point, God said, "I've had it," with this whole generation, and they're all going to just sit in the desert until this generation dies off, except for Joshua and Caleb. They were the only two of the 12 spies, who brought back the good report. And so this explains why it took 40 years, to get to where they are now. 38 years was really punishment. They talk about them as men of war, that they really weren't. It's just that everybody from the age of 20 up, which is the military age in the Bible, those were the people who are not going to be allowed to go into the promised land. And they took 38 years until that whole generation died out.
So what you can envision, and you're looking at this map, you've got a whole tribe of Israelites for 38 years that are staying on the east bank of the Jordan, waiting for the generation to die out
Well, no,
until.
they were still traveling. They were still going from place to place, but they weren't really going anywhere. They were just marking time essentially. Yeah,
Could you
yeah,
say just that they were nomadic?
yeah, they basically were just going from one place to another in the Sinai Desert, essentially, waiting for that generation to die out. Because, you can kind of imagine what the morale must have been, at the camp at that time. All these rebellions, that the Bible talks about, these uprisings against Moses, all the complaining, which is what you'd expect. I mean, these are essentially what you'd call dead men walking. I mean,
Yeah.
they have no future. They're destined just to go from place to place in the desert till they die out, and their children will be allowed to go over, into the promised land. Okay, and then the next section is from 17 through 19. Someone wants to read that.
Okay.
Sure. You want it, Rachel?
Okay. The Lord spoke to me, saying, "You are passing beyond the territory of Moab today, beyond Ar, and you will approach opposite the Ammonites. You shall not besiege them, and you shall not provoke them, for I will not give you an inheritance of the land of the Ammonites, for to the sons of Lot I have given it as an inheritance. It is also accounted as the land of the Rephaim. The Rephaim used to dwell there, and the Ammonites call them Zamzumim, a great and multitudinous people, and lofty as the giants."
Yeah. And again, this may very well be another mythological people. We don't know who these Rephaim, were. There's an interesting, if you remember way back in the creation story, back in the first, I think the second chapter or third chapter of Genesis, there's this thing about the sons of the gods marrying the daughter of men and engendering a race of giants. And so one theory is that these Rephaim might be a race of giants. And also, that was one of the complaints of the spies. When the spies that went to spy out the land came back to Moses, they said, "These guys are giants. We can't possibly cope with them." So this Rephaim might be what they were referring to also.
Hmm.
And then the next section goes from 20 through 22. So I wants to read that.
Sure.
Yeah, my numbers are a little different.
Yeah, it depends what edition of the Bible you have, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it too is considered the land of the Rephaim. The Rephaim dwelled there in it previously, and the Ammonites called them the Zamzumim. Okay, a great and populous people and tall as giants, and Hashem destroyed them before them, and they drove them out and dwelled in their place, just as he did for the children of Esau who dwell in Seir, who destroyed the Horite before them. They drove them out and dwelled in their place until this day. Keep going.
Yeah, through the end of 22.
Okay. As for the Avim who dwell in open cities until Gaza, the Caphtorim who went out of Caphtor destroyed them and dwelled in their place.
Yeah. Now these Caphtorim, Caphtor is the biblical name for the island of Crete. And so these were actually the Philistines. You know, the Philistines were the only non-Semitic people who were in the ancient world. They are believed to have come from Mycenaean civilization in Crete, sometime around the 12th century. At least the archaeologists have some evidence of them having arrived around the 12th century. And they actually, they were called the Philistines. And of course, and as you see on the map, they were to the east of Judah, pretty much where Gaza is today on a modern map. You know, Gaza was the capital city of the Philistines on the Mediterranean coast.
And that's that mysterious group of people that live there that there's not a lot of evidence of who or what they were,
Yeah.
right?
Also, it's kind of an anachronism because, you know, the usual dating of the Exodus from Egypt, you know, this is occurring sometime around the 14th century. And the archaeologists are fairly sure that there were no Philistines there until around the 12th century. And so this probably is somebody writing much later, you know, at a time when there were Philistines there. And he didn't know exactly when they came. And he's assuming that Philistines were there that far back, although the archaeologic evidence is that they weren't as far back. So it's kind of an anachronism that pops up in the text here. And then the next section, really the last section goes from 23 through 29. Someone wants to read that.
Sure, I'll go ahead. As for the Avim, who lived in villages as far as Gaza, the Caphatorium, who came from Kaphir, destroyed them and settled in their place. Rise up, set out on your journey, and go over to the valley of Arnon. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon, the Amorite king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to take possession and contend with him in battle. This day I will begin to put the dread and fear of you on the peoples who are under the whole heaven, who shall hear the report of you and shall tremble and be in anguish because of you. Want me to continue, Fred?
Yeah, go ahead through verse 29.
Okay. So I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kendemoth to Sihon, the king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, let me pass through your land. I will go only by the road. I will turn aside neither to the right nor to the left. You shall sell me food for money that I may eat, and give me water for money that I may drink. Only let me pass through on foot, as the sons of Esau who live in Seir and the Moabites who live in did for me, until I go over to the Jordan into the land that the Lord our God is giving to us. That's 29.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, if you look at the map again, they do fight with Sihon and Og, these two other Amorite kings, and the Amorite is just another name for Canaanites. It's not that the Bible uses for that. And if you look at the map, you notice that green area, which is part of Israel, extends east of the Jordan River. There's this area that sticks, and that's Gilead. We talked about that last week. Remember, the tribes of Reuben and of Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh wanted to stay on the east side of the Jordan, but because it's good for cattle, they didn't want to cross over. But they agreed to go over as advanced shock troops and help fight, and then come back. And that green area to the east of the Jordan is Gilead. That's the area that they were given, and that's essentially the land that was taken away from Og and from the other king of Heshbon, in this area here. Because this map dates from a later time, from the 8th century, when the country had broken up into two parts. You see the kingdom of Israel to north and Judah to the south, and Gilead was remained as part of the northern kingdom.
Fred,
Yeah.
do the present day Israelites claim this land that's east of the Jordan because of this map?
That's a good question. If you look at the really what they call the religious Zionists, the people who want to annex the West Bank, they're saying that their deed to the land is the Bible, and the Bible, has given them this land. But the only problem is, if the Torah has at least 4 different descriptions of the dimensions of a land, and none of the 4 are the same. All of them would include what we call the occupied West Bank. And then Gilead, that would include land to the east, but there's one description of the borders that goes all the way up to the Euphrates. And if you take that as the deed of the land, then Israel should have part of Syria and Iraq too. So it's but the people, for instance, in Netanyahu's government right now, the really aggressive settler parties who want to drive the Palestinians totally out, that they would go by this map. They believe that Israel should be biblical Israel again. Okay, actually, that was a short reading. We finished a little bit early. Let me give you the reading for next week. Let me look it up real quick. Let's see. Okay, let's see. It's going to be 7. Okay. 17th. 17th. Okay, yeah, that's a big one. That's 10 Commandments again in that reading.
Nice.
13th August. I'm trying to find out.
Well, if they're going to put them in schools, maybe we ought to read them again.
Yeah.
Very good.
Can't hurt. Yeah, I'm looking for where the reading is. It should be in this book here. Book reading 17th of August. Okay. Yeah, here it is. We'll be reading Deuteronomy, and it will be starting Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 1 will be the beginning. And it will go through Deuteronomy 5:1.
Okay.
And it will go through Deuteronomy 6:25. It's a big reading. There's a lot of good stuff in there. It includes the 10 Commandments and also the Shema. So it's one of the big readings from Deuteronomy.
Okay. Well, this is certainly an interesting segment.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, as we mentioned before, nobody can really say how much of it is really documented history and how much how much of it is myth. There really are no archaeologic traces of a lot of the stuff that the Deuteronomy talks about. And there actually is one group of modern Israeli historians who really believe that what really happened was that one group of people in ancient Israel discovered this new monotheistic religion. And so to set themselves apart from all their neighbors, they made up this mythological history, with Abraham and the patriarchs and the Exodus from Egypt and the whole business. So that everything in the Torah to them would be myth. Up until the time when there was an Israelite monarchy under King David, they would take an extreme view that all of this is myth. And which was designed to provide a historical background for this new monotheistic religion that these people developed. And,
Seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, it does. And, well, there's a certain point. I mean, I don't really buy that the world was created in 6 days, and I don't think Noah's Ark is really history. But to a certain point, factual history shades off into myth as you go back. We don't really know what that point is. And that's a real problem.
Well,
That's
and
actually a
that's
good
part,
point. I never thought of it like that. That's
yeah,
interesting.
and this is part of the verbal history. Probably any group in the world, if you look at verbal histories going back, there's so much variation if it's been documented ever.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a point where we really can't, beyond, as I mentioned, about 1000 BCE. It's really up in the air. There's no archaeologic evidence that would definite one way or the other. But then again, you could argue that since we have good archaeologic evidence that there was a King David and a King Solomon, then why should we doubt that there was a Saul or Samuel? And if Samuel was a real historical character, then why wasn't Gideon or Deborah, the judges? At a certain point, as I said, factual history shades off into myth, but we really don't know what that point is in the Bible.
No. And that's not all bad either.
No, it's not. No, it allows, and again, as we saw at the early part, the experience with Adam, parts of the Bible really are inconsistent. They're contradictory narratives about an account. So this clearly was oral history.
Well, Fred, this has been
So,
excellent.
okay.
The
So
problem
next week, I
is,
think,
Fred, that they're fighting over it like it was real.
yeah, that's the problem. There are people who are willing to kill over what may be a myth, and that's kind of disturbing.
Yeah. Well,
But again, next week I think we'll have a longer session. There's really a lot of stuff in the Torah reading for next week. So, in the
great.
meantime, I'll try to figure out how to send you that map. Okay.
Great.
I
Thanks,
told
Fred.
you, just go back to where you got it and you should be able to send it from there.
Sounds good. Okay. Let's see.
So
Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
we're starting with
Okay.
chapter 5
Right.
next week.
Yeah, with chapter 5, verse 1. Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all have a good week.
Yep. Later, gang.
Okay,
Have a good
see you
one.
next week. Okay.
See ya.